Picture a guy named David. David is 34 years old. He just made partner at his firm. His base salary just jumped to $250,000 a year. On paper, David has won the game. He is in the top percentile of earners worldwide. But if David stops working next Tuesday, he loses his house in 3 months. If he misses a bonus cycle, he can't pay his kids' private school tuition. David isn't rich. David is arguably in a more precarious position than the intern getting coffee for him. This is what we call the Golden Handcuffs. It is a specific economic phenomenon where your lifestyle scales exactly parallel to your income, creating a zero-sum game that feels like success but acts like a prison. Today, I'm going to walk you through the math of why a raise often makes you poorer, why your stock options are a psychological trick, and how to calculate the exact number you need to break the cuffs. Before we dissect David's bank account, I want to mention that analysing these financial traps is what I do here. If you want to understand money without the hype and with a bit more math, subscribing is probably the best return on investment you'll get on your time today. It costs you nothing, but it might save you 6 figures in bad decisions later. Now, let's look at the first lock on those handcuffs, the marginal utility trap. Most people think earning more money creates more freedom. I've run the numbers, and for 90% of high earners, the opposite happens. As income rises, complexity rises. And complexity is the enemy of liquidity. Let's break down exactly what happens to $1 when you get a promotion, because it definitely doesn't stay $1. Let's start with the common belief. The belief is that if you get a $20,000 raise, you have $20,000 more to save. It seems logical. You were living fine on $100,000, so at 120, that extra 20 is pure profit, right? This is the static lifestyle myth. The problem is that human beings are not static. When you get that promotion, you don't just see numbers in a bank account. You see permission. You tell yourself, I work hard. I deserve a better mattress. I deserve to order delivery instead of cooking. I deserve the gym with the eucalyptus towels. It starts small. It's not a Lamborghini. It's the $12 salad instead of the sandwich. It's the upgrade to Economy Plus. These seem like rounding errors, but I've noticed that these rounding errors, when aggregated, tend to equal exactly the amount of your raise. You don't feel richer because your baseline for normal just moved up. Let's look at the hard math of that $20,000 raise. First, the government takes their cut. If you're a high earner between federal, state, and payroll taxes, you're likely losing 40% off the top. So that $20,000 is actually $12,000. Now, usually a raise comes with more responsibility. Maybe you have to go into the office 5 days instead of 3. That's commuting costs, gas, wear and tear, or train tickets. Let's call that $2,000 a year. You're down to 10. Because you're working later, you order takeout 2 more nights a week. At $50 a pop for a year, that's $5,000. You're down to 5. You need a new suit or better work clothes to match the new role? There goes another $1,000. We are left with $4,000 of actual, distinct value from a $20,000 raise. And we haven't even touched inflation yet. When you factor in the time cost, the extra hours you're likely working to keep that title, your hourly rate might have actually gone down. You are working harder for phantom income. Here is the psychological twist. Even if you know that math, you still spend it. Why? It's called Hedonic Adaptation. It's a fancy term for getting used to nice things. The first time you fly first class, it's an event. You take a picture of the warm nuts. The second time, it's nice. The third time, it's just travel. The 10th time, if you get bumped back to economy, you feel like you're being punished. This is the trap. The pleasure of the upgrade fades quickly, but the pain of downgrading lasts forever. Once you upgrade your lifestyle, that new level becomes your floor. You cannot go back without feeling a sense of failure. So, you have to keep earning that higher salary just to maintain your emotional baseline. You aren't working for profit anymore, you are working to avoid the psychological pain of regression. So, how do you accept a raise without putting on the handcuffs? You need a protocol. I use the 50% rule. It is rigid and it is non-negotiable. Whenever your income increases, 50% of the net increase goes automatically to savings or investments. The other 50% can go to lifestyle. If you get a $1,000 a month raise after tax, $500 goes to your brokerage account, and $500 can go toward a nicer car lease or better wine. This allows you to enjoy the fruits of your labour, because we aren't monks. But it ensures your savings rate scales with your income. Most people scale their spending at 100% of their raise. By capping it at 50, you artificially slow down the creep. You keep the handcuffs loose enough to slip your wrists out if you ever need to escape. Now, lifestyle creep is dangerous, but it's usually reversible. You can stop buying the $12 salads. You can cancel the gym membership. But there is one purchase that locks the handcuffs so tight you need a lawyer and 6 months to get out of it. It's the purchase that everyone tells you is a good investment. I'm talking about your house. If you think your primary residence is an asset, you are about to see why, mathematically, it is actually your biggest liability. We are taught from birth that rent is throwing money away, and buying a house is building equity. So, when the big salary comes in, the first thing David does is buy the biggest house the bank will approve him for. He thinks he's being responsible. He thinks he's investing. But he isn't just buying a house, he's buying a neighbourhood. And neighbourhoods with expensive houses have invisible taxes. You can't park a rusted Toyota in the driveway of a $2 million home. The neighbours will look at you sideways. So you upgrade the car. You can't have a dirt patch for a lawn. You need landscaping. The house dictates the lifestyle. The house is the anchor for the golden handcuffs. It sets a minimum monthly burn rate that requires you to keep that high-stress job just to keep the roof over your head. Let's run the numbers on a big mortgage. Let's say you buy a $1 million home. You put 20% down, you have an $800,000 mortgage at, let's be optimistic, 6% interest. Your payment is roughly $4,800 a month. But that's just the mortgage. Add property taxes. In a good area, that's another $1,000 a month. Insurance? $300. Maintenance? The rule of thumb is 1% of the home's value per year. That is $10,000 a year, or roughly $800 a month. Utilities on a big house? $500. Suddenly, that $4,800 mortgage is actually costing you $7,400 a month. That is almost $90,000 a year of post-tax income just to exist in the box. To generate $90,000 post-tax, you need to earn about $150,000 pre-tax. So, the first $150,000 you earn every year essentially belongs to the house. You are working from January to August just to pay for the place where you sleep. The hidden cost here isn't just money, it's mobility. This is the psychological twist. When you rent, if your boss becomes a nightmare or the company culture turns toxic, you can leave. You can move to a cheaper city, take a pay cut, and pivot. When you own that massive house, you are geographically and financially frozen. You cannot easily sell $1 million home in a recession. Transaction costs alone, agent fees, closing costs, will eat 6 to 10% of the value. On $1 million, that's 60 to 100 grand just to leave. So you stay. You tolerate the toxic boss. You work the 80-hour weeks. Not because you love the passion of the job, but because the house demands to be fed. The mortgage turns you from a free agent into a feudal serf who just happens to wear a Rolex. The solution is not never buy a house. It's don't buy too much house. The protocol I recommend is the 30% net rule. Your total housing costs, mortgage, tax, insurance, utilities, should never exceed 30% of your net take-home pay. Not your gross pay. Banks will approve you for way more, sometimes up to 45% of your gross. Do not listen to the bank. The bank wants you to be a serf. They love serfs who pay interest. By sticking to 30% of net pay, you ensure that one bad month or a temporary job loss doesn't spiral into foreclosure. It means buying a smaller house than you qualify for. It means your friends might have nicer guest rooms than you. But it also means you can sleep at night, which, frankly, is the ultimate luxury. Okay, we've covered the house and the lifestyle. But maybe you're smart. You rent, you drive a Honda, you think you're free. But then your company offers you RSUs, restricted stock units. They say, here is $100,000 in stock, vesting over 4 years. This is the most sophisticated handcuff ever invented. It looks like wealth. It feels like wealth. But I'm going to show you why it's actually a mechanism to underpay you while making you feel grateful for it. Most people look at unvested stock as their money. It's not. It's a retention bonus that you have to re-earn every single day. Here is the scenario. You hate your job. You want to leave. But you look at your employee dashboard and see that in 6 months, another tranche of stock vests. It's worth $25,000. You think, I can't leave now. I'd be leaving 25 grand on the table. I'll just stick it out for 6 more months. So you stay. 6 months pass. The stock vests. But guess what? In that time, they gave you a refresher grant. Now there is another tranche vesting in another 6 months. The carrot is always dangling just out of reach. This is by design. Companies layer these grants so there is never a good time to leave. There is always a pile of money just over the horizon. It keeps you running on the treadmill, focused on the future payout rather than your present misery. Let's do the math on sticking it out. Suppose you are staying in a job you hate, just for a $25,000 vest that hits in 6 months. That is roughly $4,000 a month. That is your price. You are selling your happiness, your mental health, and 40 hours of your week for $4 grand a month pre-tax. If you really break it down, after taxes, it's maybe $2,500. Is your misery worth $2,500 a month? Furthermore, opportunity cost is real. If you left that job for a new company, you would likely get a signing bonus and a new initial stock grant that outweighs what you are leaving behind. Data consistently shows that job hoppers increase their salary faster than loyal employees. By staying for the vest, you aren't just earning that stock, you are losing the potential 20% bump you'd get on the open market. You are stepping over dollars to pick up pennies. Why do we fall for this? It's a cognitive bias called loss aversion. Psychologically, the pain of losing something is twice as powerful as the pleasure of gaining something. We view unvested stock as ours, so leaving feels like a theft. We feel like we are writing a check to the company, but you aren't. Unvested stock is play money. It's monopoly money until it hits your brokerage account. The company knows that if they can make you feel ownership over that future money, you will endure incredible amounts of stress to protect it. They are hacking your brain's fear center. You need to flip the script. Instead of asking, what do I lose if I leave? Ask, what is the price I am paying to stay? Usually, the price is your sanity, and that is a depreciating asset. Here is the protocol for handling stock cuffs. Ignore the vesting schedule. Seriously, when you evaluate your income, only count the base salary and the stock that vests this year. Anything beyond a 12-month horizon does not exist. It is a bonus, a lottery ticket. If you get a job offer elsewhere, compare the total compensation annualized. If a new company offers you a higher base that makes up for the lost stock, take it. Cash is king. Cash is liquid. Stock options are a promise that can be broken if the stock price crashes or if you get laid off before the vest date. Never let paper money dictate your life choices. Treat unvested stock as zero, and you instantly break the psychological hold it has on you. We have talked about the math, the house, and the stock. But the strongest handcuff isn't financial, it's ego. This is where conventional wisdom says, dress for the job you want. I'm going to tell you that dressing for the job you have is what keeps you poor. There is a hidden cost to high-status jobs that doesn't show up on a spreadsheet, but it bleeds your net worth dry. It's the cost of maintaining the image of success. And for many people, this is the hardest cuff to unlock, because it requires killing a version of yourself. In our culture, the first question anyone asks at a party is, "What do you do?" If your answer is, "I'm a senior vice president at Tech Corp," you get a nod of respect. You get social validation. We start to merge our identity with our income. We think, "I am a $200,000 a year person." And a $200,000 a year person doesn't drive a 10-year-old car. They don't wear off-the-rack suits. They don't vacation at the local beach. They go to Tulum. The job title forces a behavioural code. You feel an immense pressure to signal your status to your peers. If you don't keep up, you feel like an imposter. This is the imposter tax. You spend money to convince everyone else, and yourself, that you belong in the club. Let's price out the imposter tax. It's the luxury car lease, $800 a month. It's the membership to the private club or the high-end gym to network, $300 a month. It's the endless rounds of drinks you buy for the team to look like a leader, $400 a month. It's the darker side too, the therapy, the stress-relieving massages, the expensive, convenient food, because you're too exhausted to cook. I've estimated that maintaining a high-status persona costs between $15,000 to $20,000 a year in purely signalling behaviour. That is $20,000 that buys you zero utility, only perception. If you invested that $20,000 annually at 7% returns, in 20 years that is nearly $1 million. You are literally burning $1 million of your future freedom just to look like a big shot today. The twisted part is that nobody actually cares. The spotlight effect is a psychological bias where we think everyone is watching us closely. We think they notice our watch, our car, our suit. The reality? They are too busy worrying about their own watch, car, and suit. Everyone is so consumed with their own performance of success that they barely register yours. You are bankrupting yourself to impress people who are too self-absorbed to notice. And even if they do notice, status is a treadmill. There is always someone with a bigger boat. There is always a higher title. You cannot win the status game because the goalposts move every time you score. The only way to win is to walk off the field. The antidote to the identity trap is stealth wealth. It is the practice of looking poorer than you are. It means driving the reliable sedan until the wheels fall off, even if you can afford the Porsche. It means wearing a plain t-shirt while your net worth compounds in the background. When you decouple your ego from your spending, you become dangerous. You become free. You can walk into a meeting and speak your mind because you don't need the job to pay for the lease on the BMW. You don't fear getting fired because your lifestyle costs half of what your peers' lifestyles cost. Power isn't the corner office. Power is having 6 months of expenses in cash and zero consumer debt. That is the only status symbol that actually matters. We've covered the traps. Now we need the escape plan. Most people think the only way out is to save a pile of money and retire at 65. That is the old model. I'm going to propose a different timeline. A timeline where you can break the handcuffs in 3 to 5 years, not 30. It requires a specific number, a specific calculation that almost nobody does until it's too late. It's called the FU money ratio, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. The reason the Golden Handcuffs work is that we never define enough. If you don't have a finish line, you will keep running until you collapse. The corporate world relies on your ambiguity. They want you to think you need $5 million to be safe. But you don't. You need to calculate your freedom number. This is your annual expenses multiplied by 25. This is the standard FIRE, financial independence, retire early, math. If you spend $40,000 a year, you need $1 million invested. If you spend $100,000, you need $2.5 million. The lower your expenses, the closer the finish line gets. The most effective way to quit your job isn't to earn more, it's to need less. Every $100 you cut from your monthly budget reduces your freedom number by $30,000. Let's calculate the runway. Let's say you have $100,000 saved. If your lifestyle costs you $10,000 a month, you have 10 months of freedom. That's scary. That keeps you in the job. But if you embrace stealth wealth, cut the big house, ditch the car payments, and get your burn rate down to $4,000 a month, that same $100,000 now buys you 25 months of freedom. 2 years. Imagine what you could build in 2 years. You could start a business. You could pivot careers. You could take a mini retirement. The math proves that lowering your burn rate is exponentially more powerful than increasing your income. It buys you time. And time is the resource the Golden Handcuffs are stealing from you. Your savings shouldn't just be a number. They should be measured in years of autonomy. The psychological barrier here is the fear of the gap. We are terrified of having a blank space on our resume. We think if we step off the ladder, we will never get back on. But here is the secret. Employers love interesting people. The guy who took a year off to hike the Andes or bootstrap a failed startup is infinitely more interesting than the guy who sat in a cubicle for 10 straight years pushing papers. The risk of the gap is an illusion. The real risk is looking back at age 80 and realizing you spent your prime years stressing over quarterly reports for a company that replaced you 2 weeks after you retired. The gap isn't a hole in your career. It's the foundation of your life. Here's your final protocol, the ramp down. Don't quit tomorrow. That's reckless. Instead, start quiet quitting. Do exactly what is required of your job and not 1 ounce more. Stop volunteering for extra projects. Stop answering emails after 6 p.m. Take that energy and pour it into building a lifeboat. This could be a side hustle, a consulting gig, or just aggressive saving. Use the company's paycheck to fund your exit. Treat your job like an investor in your future freedom. Give yourself a 6-month timeline. In those 6 months, cut expenses, bank cash, and mentally detach. When the day comes to hand in your resignation, it won't be a scary leap. It will be a calculated step onto a bridge you've spent the last half year building. The Golden Handcuffs are not made of metal. They are made of expectations. They are forged by the belief that high spending equals high success. They are locked by the fear of looking like you're falling behind. But the moment you realize that true wealth is the ability to wake up and do whatever you want, the cuffs unlock. You don't need the corner office. You don't need the luxury SUV. You need autonomy. And autonomy is cheap if you are willing to ignore the Joneses. Remember, the Joneses are broke. They are drowning in debt to impress you. Don't join them. If this breakdown helped you spot a few leaks in your own ship, do me a favor. Hit the like button. It acts as a signal to the algorithm to show this to more people who need to hear it. And in the comments, tell me, what is the one luxury expense you know you should cut but can't bring yourself to do it? Is it the car? The coffee? The apartment? I read all the comments because I want to know what your handcuffs are made of. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.